see if there are questions from what Barbara Lee was talking about last week.
Oh, I didn't tell you that was good.
Audrey and Evelyn are having a class of their own.
That's probably really good.
We're ready.
I want to go to their class.
Okay.
I just thought Rainier's dream of the chessboard pieces was very interesting.
Indeed it was, yeah.
I don't understand all of it completely.
Dream, this is Rainier.
Hey,
Hi.
Hey.
dreaming Rainier.
Yeah.
This week I really gave some thought to what we talked about, the relationship not only to Rainier's dream, but also to things that have been transpiring. During the course of my being sick and shut in, I had quite a few visions and insights. Stuff that will come up probably later on. Seems like somebody else is chipper. And maybe it's contagious. And what I began to see is this. The whole idea of the restoration. Would you consider the word?
Yes, sir.
The restoration of feminine presence. I began to see with a greater clarity two, maybe three things in particular. One is that with this revelation of, or this resurgence of domestic violence, I think that what's happening is that the Caucasian female is being freed from bondage.
Good.
And that's the last vesture of bondage that we have to deal with. The other thing is that I think there is no escaping the whole concept of our being Africans. And what I mean by that is we're not African Americans, we're Africans. And the reason I say that is because what happened, I heard someone talking and saying, I've never been to Africa, so I'm an African American. And what clicked inside of me was, you are an African. How do I know that? It's not that you are in Africa, Africa is in you. And that's what makes you an African. If you don't believe it, look at your genes. So when you look at it genetically, you can't change that fact. And the realism of African being in you is also the manifestation of the origin of spiritual life is in you, in that it is represented through the amount of melanin that is in you physically, which is life itself. Also, I saw this a connection between all of these things, the problem that we have been facing in trying to move forward, not just as a people, but as humanity itself. The problem lies in our recognition of what's been happening to us, or observing what's been taking place. We have been talking about having been growing up in a separate society, most of us in this room, but being integrated into a racially mixed society and being integrated into a white society. Mm-hmm. And I am of the opinion that we were not integrated into a society at all. We were integrated into a system.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's very true.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is because when you are integrated into a society, you are just as much of that part of the society as anyone in it. when you are integrated into a system, then you become reflective of that system, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. And when I think about how, for example, the policeman in Baltimore killed Freddie Gray, and they were African policemen as well as Caucasian. And if you are integrated in a system, then what you do, you perpetuate the system, and it has nothing to do with your race or your culture. It has everything to do with the system itself. And because when I was in college, it would have been unheard of for black policemen to treat black people the way black policemen treat black people now.
Right.
So when we bought into the system, now it becomes a part of our lives, in that we're perpetuators of the system, and it doesn't matter who you are. The system is designed to keep those in power who are in power, and is designed to keep those who are in bondage in bondage. Now, how do you change that? Every effort to make that change has been political. It has been, the expectation for that change has been left upon the shoulders of those who vote and those who make laws. Even if the system is torn down or destroyed, if you don't have a system to replace it, you're going to reinstate the same system, because that's all you know. So it is my contention that the system is not to be destroyed by us. The system is to be replaced.
To be what?
Replaced. And the reason I say is to be replaced is because I see the necessity of putting a spiritual system in place. A system that has not existed for many, many years. This system of which I speak is a system that Jesus laid the foundation for. And the foundation for that system was not uprooted, but it was hidden. And it was hidden based upon man's desire for popularity, for acceptance, and for power and prestige. And the system that we are living under now is a system that presented itself as being spiritual. The basis for what the system we were in is Christianity. Christianity as it has been taught from the pulpits of Rome, as opposed to having been taught from the mountaintops of Palestine. And
so Christianity then is a puppet of the system, in a sense, of the current system.
it is very difficult to say that, and the reason is because there are times when Christianity is a puppet of the system, and there are times when the system is a puppet of Christianity.
Yeah.
You see?
Yeah.
So one is the beast of the land, of which Revelation speaks, and the other is the beast of the sea. The government itself is the beast of the land, and this system of Christianity is the beast of the sea, being spiritual, or presenting itself as such. So, the root of the Christianity, and I use this word Christianity very loosely, but I also use it for context, as opposed to labeling something. The Christianity that Jesus taught, its roots are still in Palestine. However, every time there was a shoot growing from those roots, the Christianity that was rooted in Rome would cut it down, seek to destroy it. It would hide it. It would steal its fruit and not ingest it, but would steal its fruit and put it in a hiding place as opposed to sharing it with mankind. The root of Roman Christianity is just as powerless as ashes are in the wind, or as dust is in the wind. The wind can blow it where it wants to, because the dust has no power against the wind. And Roman Christianity has no power when it comes up against the whims of mankind. It has no power to change anything for the better, but it does have the power to be destructive, and it has the power to enslave. And the reason it has the power to be destructive and to enslave is because humanity gives it that power in exchange for a promise of material wealth and comfort. Am I making sense? Yeah.
I'm a little bit confused. You're saying Jesus taught Christianity.
No,
You're just calling it that
I'm
as
just calling
context.
it context.
Okay.
Just context. And let me hasten to say this: the reason I'm using it for context is because it's easier to follow me.
Okay.
Jesus actually did not teach Judaism, neither did he teach Christianity. Jesus just taught the spiritual way of life, period. As did Muhammad, for that matter. He taught a spiritual way of life as opposed to teaching what we label as Islam, because Islam simply means submission, and Muslim means one who submits to God. So it's simply not true that it should have been labeled, that he taught something to be labeled as Islam. He simply taught people that they should submit to the Creator, as did Jesus. So when we talk about Christianity, from again using the context of it, about Jesus in reference to Jesus, the Christianity was lost. Well, not lost, was hidden in Palestine, even though every effort was made to uproot it and bring it to Rome, because there was in it a value, and the value that was in it was an opportunity for those who were literate to control those who were illiterate. It also needed an arm to force its way into existence and prominence. So it coupled itself to, or it married the government, and by marrying the government, what it did in essence was by itself an army, not only to defend its principles, but to force its principles on humanity.
And what was it that married the government?
Roman Christianity.
Okay.
Married the government. Where did this this Roman Christianity, where did it have its birth? Where did it come from? Roman Christianity did not come from Catholicism. Catholicism came from Roman Christianity. When Paul had his experience on the road to Damascus, he experienced, according to his writings, the presence of Yeshua, of Jesus, speaking to him, and he experienced, as he describes it, a physical blindness, and he was he accepted the call into the service of spreading the teachings of Jesus. However, his desire for power got the best of him. And what I mean by that is he got caught up in his philosophical beliefs. He got caught up in his feelings and desires. He got caught up in a sense of selfishness. And he began to teach the Christianity that he learned from Jesus. He began to teach it as a mixture of Greek philosophy and Roman divinity. And what I mean by Roman divinity is that the Romans believed that their rulers were human gods. And in order for Christianity, the Palestinian Christianity, to be palatable to the Romans, he had to change it to fit the Roman belief system. And when he did this, he admitted what he was doing when he said, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. So he made Jesus a human God as opposed to a prophet. If you look at the writings of those who walked with Jesus, you will see that they reference him as being a prophet. Not only those who walked with him, but those who came in contact with him referred to him as being a prophet and not a God in terms of 100% God, 100% man. That's Roman Christianity. That is not Palestinian Christianity. That is not what Jesus taught. Why am I saying all of this? The reason I am is because if a spiritual system is to be in place, then the foundation of it must be understood. And if we make any attempt to build upon a foundation of the Christianity that came out of Rome, it will result in the system that is in place now being strengthened. However, if we build on the foundation of the Christianity that Jesus taught, and again, I use that for context only. If we use the spiritual principles, maybe I should say that Jesus taught, and we build on them, then we are on a journey to bringing humanity to a place of balance and freeing humanity from self-imposed bondage. That is one of the reasons we had to first disconnect ourselves from this, or maybe I should say uncouple ourselves from a deep desire to have material gain and seeing success based upon what we were able to achieve in a material way. We had to uncouple ourselves from that. Why? Because when you travel this journey of spiritual reconciliation, you cannot be tied to a couple to this material world. The weight of it is too heavy. Think about it this way. When you are on a journey, you don't take your house with you. You don't take all your belongings with you. You travel light. And on the spiritual journey, you must travel light. And light travel entails seeking the kingdom and its righteousness and allowing the Creator to add everything that is needed as you move along this journey. Because it is impossible for you or for us to carry everything we need along this journey. We just pick it up as we go. And pick it up means allowing the Creator to add it. Roman Christianity is based upon material accumulation. It's based upon governmental strength. It's based upon might makes right. The spiritual principles that Jesus taught are based upon a type of humanity who understands that it is spiritual, yet it lives in a material world, and the material world in which it lives has no owners in terms of certain people having ownership and control of the resources in the material world. But the material world belongs to the whole of humanity, and it is simply there for the benefit of the material body of humanity, so that the spiritual essence of humanity can be manifested in the way that it was intended to manifest from the beginning. So at some point, we are going to be mandated to speak more clearly to humanity about how it has allowed itself to be placed in bondage by virtue of being gullible to whatever is being taught based upon the scriptures that Rome allowed us to have, as opposed to looking at the writings that Rome allowed us to have, but also looking at the writings of the others who walked with Jesus. Also looking at the writings of Muhammad as well. Christianity is, Roman Christianity is the only religion that I have come across and European Judaism, I should say. European Judaism and Roman Christianity are the only religions that I've seen that discounts the prophetic representations that comes from other cultures. They discount Muhammad, they discount Buddha, they discount anything that they themselves have not put in play in this earth. They see it as being darkness, they see it as being unenlightened. Now, the thing that gets me about that is all of these people who discount the other holy men or prophets in other cultures have never studied them. They have never read the writings as it pertains to Buddhism, neither have they read the Quran or any other for that matter. Yet they condemn it.
Because brown people wrote them.
I beg your pardon?
Because brown people wrote them.
Absolutely. And that's exactly where I'm headed.
Sorry.
That's okay. So the reason for that is because Rome, Europe, has dictated what religion is supposed to be and what is holy and what isn't. And if the Caucasian does not agree with it, then it's wrong. And everything that, here we go, brown people are people of color, that was the word I was going to use. Everything that people of color has brought into this earth realm has been seen as in pagan, has its origin in paganism by Christianity or Judaism, as it is taught from Europeans or taught by Europeans. So, the Christianity that we have been taught and that people are constantly reteaching or recycling, because they don't understand it anyway, so they're recycling it, has as its foundation the the writings of Paul. Now, one of the things that I find extremely interesting is that the doctrine of redemption does not come from Jesus, neither does it come from those who were Jesus' disciples or apostles, how you want to refer to them. The doctrine of redemption comes from Paul. And the danger with the doctrine of redemption is that it presupposes that there is an entity more powerful than the entity that created us. So this entity has captured us, and now this Jesus has to redeem us by presenting his blood to this entity, which cannot possibly be, because if the one who created us created everything that is, there is nothing more powerful than it. So to whom would this redemptive blood be presented? So it's not redemption, it's restoration, it's reconciliation. Also, the doctrine of salvation / eternal life has also been, and I'm just using a couple examples, has been misconstrued, or has been, as Thomas says, taught by Paul the impostor.
The imposter.
An imposter. And
Not Paul the
IMP.
impossible, Paul
Yeah.
the imposter.
Yeah. So that's it. Anyway, so Paul says, believe on the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, and thou shalt be what? Saved. Right? Now, understand something. Jesus never said, believe in me, and you will be saved. Jesus talked about believing in the Father, didn't he? He never talked about believing in him. Neither did he describe himself as our creator either. If you read in Matthew, I think it's 19, somewhere around verse 14 to 16 something, when it talks about someone asking, who is my neighbor? And it resulted in the person asking, how can I obtain everlasting life? Jesus said, love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, thy soul, and thy mind, love thy neighbor as thyself. And then he goes on to recite the 10 Commandments, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not get married, etc. He goes through all the 10 Commandments, and at the end of that, he says, do these things and you will have eternal life. So the question becomes, do we follow what Jesus said in terms of eternal life, or do we follow what Paul said the journey is for eternal life? I for some reason believe what Jesus said, as opposed to what Paul said. That's an example, one example, but also the other examples of European Judaism and European Christianity is how they relate to females. When you look at European Judaism and European Christianity and European Islam, you see that females are treated with disdain. They're treated as if they are property. However, when you read the writings of Jesus, they differ when it comes to a female than the writings of Paul. Jesus speaks to a woman at the well, and she goes and tells other men what Jesus has said. And Paul says, if a woman is to learn, let her ask her husband. And Jesus is teaching this woman, Jesus, the prophet, is teaching this woman who is not his wife, So that in itself is contrary to what Paul taught. Also, if you listen at the different denominations of Christianity, all of them teach the same things when it comes to females that Paul taught. When you look at the different denominations of Islam, they teach the same thing about females that Paul taught. However, when you read the Quran itself, it does not treat women or females in the way that it is presented in our society. I was talking with someone this week, and one of the things that we talked about was the whole concept of the hijab coming from Zoroastrianism, out of the Ottoman Empire, as opposed to being something that was that Muhammad instituted for females to wear. And only thing he talked about when he came to dress in terms of females was dressing modest. And he said the same thing about men as well. So these things that we purport to know or to understand are actually the chains of spiritual bondage that we have been continuously perpetuating. So the key to unlocking these chains of bondage is not a continuation of the same teachings, neither is it an attempt to purify these teachings, because there is no purification for them. The key to it is understanding what I'm referencing as Palestinian Christianity, or the spiritual principles of Jesus. When we begin to expand or expound upon the spiritual principles that Jesus taught, we began to see a commonality between them and Islam and Buddhism and all the other spiritual teachings around the world. And these teachings are the keys to unlocking these chains of spiritual bondage.
So, you just said when you were talking about the hijab and where it came from, just like the Pharisees added all of those laws on top of that
Yes.
basic spiritual principle of your neighbors yourself, love Lord and love your neighbors yourself.
Right.
Muslims also took other stuff and overlaid it on these spiritual principles. But if you go back to the root of the spiritual principles, they are the same without the adornments, without
Right.
the adornments of man.
Absolutely.
They are the same.
The principles are the same, absolutely. And see, this is the thing that also gets me, is that we have been indoctrinated to the extent that we are very uncomfortable even mentioning the name Muhammad or Quran. We have been manipulated to the point where we feel unclean if we talk about the true nature of Muhammad. So I had to ask myself, why? What would change if I see Muhammad as being a prophet? What would change? Nothing. Because the spiritual principles never change. All of them remain the same regardless of who expounds upon them. It does not matter whether it is a Muhammad doing it, or Jesus doing it, or James doing it, or Barbara, or whomever doing it. The principles remain the same. The person who speaks the principles can't change the principles. You can lie about them, you can make attempt to manipulate them, but you can't change principles. They are written in stone. They cannot be changed. So I suppose what I am saying is that we are going to have to have a complete paradigm shift when it comes to understanding spiritual principles. At some juncture, we're going to intersect with Roman Christianity and European Judaism. At some juncture, we're going to intersect with it, and we're going to have to deal with it for what it is. And what is it? Just like the Islamic denominations have drifted into idolatry, so has Roman religion. Roman Christianity is idolatry. The Christianity that we follow all our lives is actually idolatry. And the reason I say that is, one is very simple. When someone in the church dies, especially if they were their ears on and did all this stuff, worked for the Lord in the church, what do we say? What is said about that person? Lord, she loved her church. She loved her pastor. She loved the missionary. Right?
Yeah.
She loved her church. That's idolatry. Love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, thy soul, and thy mind. Isn't that what the scripture says? That's idolatry. If it's not idolatry, then tell me why is it I can't sit on the communion table? If it's not idolatry. So we have to call it for what it is, and at some point our paths are going to be crossed with people who need to hear that, who need to understand that this is idolatry and there is no other way to put it. And idolatry is an abomination to the one who created us all. And the laws, here I go, the laws that the priests added in terms of the Levitican stuff is no different than Sharia law.
I'm laughing because it's true.
Yeah, it's no different than Sharia law.
Same thing.
Same thing. So when we look at it realistically, we begin to see that the same thing that unites us in terms of spiritual principles is also the opposite of the thing that unites us in terms of our ignorance.
I was going to go further and say the Caliphate and Israel, same thing.
No difference.
No difference.
No different. Because if you look at the Caliphate based upon the Quran, it is for the benefit of the community, of the nation. It was the Caliphate that protected Christians from Catholics. The ones who were teaching the principles of Jesus were protected by Muhammad.
Well, actually, the true Caliphate was a little better than Israel.
Well, far more than Israel, but the one that you speak is ISIS type.
Yeah.
Yes. The protection stretched from Turkey. It was Turkey, Syria, Jordan, and the whole area. Once you crossed into the nation that was led by Muhammad, you practiced in a religion you chose. And it's right there in the Quran when it talks about men being free to worship their God. Whether it be, as he puts it, Allah or whomever. That's in the Quran.
It's Ali Kitab, which is the people of the book.
Yes. Say it again.
Ali Kitab.
Yes. That's it.
So what book are they talking about when you say people of the book?
They're talking about all the
All the
All
books.
the books.
All the books.
Okay, and
Jewish-
it's really another way of saying the people who practice the basic spiritual principles
Yes.
across any kind of
Yes.
culture or
That's it. And I promise you,
Way.
if this is what I'm going to do. Monday, I have a mixture of people in my class on Monday. And what I'm going to do on Monday, I'm going to read passages from the Quran. And instead of saying Allah, I'm going to say God. And then I'm going to ask them, let's discuss this and see what it's saying. And then I'm going to let them know where it comes from. The Quran talks about the angel Gabriel coming to Mary and telling her she is with child, just as does the Bible. The Quran talks about Jesus, the prophet, and the purpose for his coming. I mean, when you look at how he deals with Abraham, and how Abraham I grew up as an idolater, but yet God spoke to his heart, and how all of that changed, and told him to leave his people. Right? When Jesus says that that you are to hate your father, your mother, etc. Right? There has been a lot of questions about what does that really mean. No one really wants to get into that because we have been looking at it from Pauline Christianity, or from Roman Christianity, or European Christianity. That's how we've been looking at it, and European Judaism refused to look at it at all. All Jesus is saying is the same thing that God told, or the Creator said to Abraham: leave your father, leave your home, leave your country, didn't it? Leave all this behind. So Jesus is saying, in order for you to love God the way that you are supposed to, if you are being hampered by your parents, your mother, your father, etc., if they are hindering that, then you have to leave them. No different than what Abraham had to do. No different. That's the same principle. So when we look at these spiritual principles, what do we see? We Denise.
Sorry. You were talking about leaving father and mother.
Mhm.
I wanted to expand that a little bit into like the way of thinking that we were nurtured in, or I'm not sure how you would translate father, but it means coming out of like your misunderstandings and your misconceptions.
That's the whole spiritual nature of it. That's it for real, for real. I mean, when you leave everything behind, it's talking about changing the way you think. It's talking about a true paradigm shift. So the nature of it all is based upon the depth of your desire to be who you were created to be. It's just that simple. When we look at it, the principles involved here, what do we see? We see that Peter and Barnabas and Matthew and Mark and all the other dudes who walked with Jesus, right? The guys who were with Jesus. The root of the principles of Jesus is in Palestine. However, when Paul took it to Rome, he took a different Jesus to Rome. The Jesus that he took to Rome did not come from Palestine. The Jesus that he took to Rome came from Roman culture, came from the belief about Roman gods. The unknown God at Mars Hill, Mars Hill rather. The Jesus that he took with him or that he gave them rather, was not the Jesus that he learned of in Palestine, but it is the Jesus who could justify doing anything to control the people around you, as well as the people who did not look like you.
How much awareness did he have? I mean, was this a case of he failed to walk away from his sort of ideas and misconceptions, and
He thought he had.
Yeah.
Because he said, I was a Pharisee of Pharisees. I was born of the tribe of Benjamin. He said that he was that, but he continued to be that. And his writings are extremely philosophical. And a careful reading of them not only reveals that, but a careful reading of them also reveals there are some truth sprinkled in it, but it also reveals the difference between what Jesus taught and what the other apostles taught, as opposed to Paul himself.
Well, it was the Pharisees who were writing things like Leviticus,
Right.
all those laws and rules and blah, 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 blah. So he was very well versed in that.
Very well versed in it.
I mean, you could almost call him a lawyer,
Yes.
very well versed in it. So it was truly a part of him that he invariably couldn't get away from.
Well, I see him as no different than the person who begins the journey with open eyes and an open heart, and they're extremely serious about it. And then they begin to see the misconstrued virtues of following the system. And the system of which I speak is, in today's vernacular, getting a larger church. Basing God's blessing on material things. Manipulating the people for financial gain, as opposed to looking at the hearts of humanity and speaking to the hearts of mankind for the purpose of transformation.
So your assertion then is coming out from leaving father and mother, adding to what Janice said, is that people will not come out of spiritual bondage and be the spiritual beings that they are until they understand that what has nurtured them, what has supported them and provided for them, the system that has, that has framed their way of thinking, is what they have to leave.
Right.
And that's what you mean by the eye opening.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of leaving father and mother, leaving the basic thought of what you thought was father and mother, understanding. And it doesn't mean that the physical being that was father and mother is bigger than that.
Yes, it's much
It's the
larger.
thinking
Yes.
process.
It's the concept.
So is that what Paul did not do?
That's what he did not do.
Yep.
Paul,
Because he was well versed in Greek culture too.
yeah, absolutely he was. Well, he studied Plato in depth. Lost my train of thought there for a moment. Paul bit the apple in the garden. The serpent is ego.
He went on and made a pie.
Okay.
Just saying.
Ego. He was extremely egotistical and arrogant. Now, take that statement that I just made and look at all the passages that you read. Egotistical and arrogant. And it is actually a form of self-debasing when you are ignorantly arrogant. you're arrogant about your ignorance. That in itself is nice. Darn.
Wow.
And
Is that like President Trump? We was just saying that. It's not like Republicans.
yeah, I'm sure you're
Yeah, they
arrogant,
do.
and that's the whole political concept. If you speak forcefully enough and say it often enough, people will buy into it. Because bottom line, humanity has been conditioned not to think. So what happens?
He
Wait.
is the physical manifestation, and the system now is the physical manifestation of what you just said about you say it often enough, and you say it from a perceived position of power
Yeah.
often enough that people begin to believe it, and that's the framework upon which leaving father and mother is talking about. You got to leave all that stuff you thought was true. The stuff that you knew, that's all you knew at the time, and be open to learning,
Ad,
truth.
advertisement. If you can get someone to hear it 7 times or see it 7 times, they got it. It
Even the
becomes
7
subliminal
has a
at that
spiritual
point.
basis.
Yeah, it becomes subliminal at that point.
Be completely ignorant.
Yeah, you're right. So where is all of this stuff coming from? When I was lying down in that bed, not with the bronchitis end of it, but with the influenza end of it, I began to see things. And the things that I started seeing were, first of all, it started off with colors.
Colors? Okay.
And the thing that was different with the colors was I was reading them.
Reading colors, wow.
It was like reading a book. But I was not reading them audibly. I knew that they were speaking to my soul. And as they spoke to my soul, I began to see a division between the Jesus I know and the Jesus that Paul gave us. And when I started feeling different in terms of my body, started to feel like it was overcoming the flu, I was led to read scriptures. And as I read them, I could see that the Pauline writings was not traveling simultaneously with what I was reading. It was traveling parallel to it on a different road. And when I thought I had fully recovered, I was compelled to read Barnabas, and then I was compelled to revisit the Quran. And I had not read it since college. And in doing so, it spoke differently than it did the first time I read it. And what I mean by that is it was saying the same things to me that the writings of Jesus were saying. I saw the same Abraham in the Quran that I saw in the Bible. I experienced a deeper relationship with the God of Abraham as I looked at it through the eyes of Muhammad and through the eyes of Moses, because both of them saw the same thing. And when I looked at the serpent, when I looked at the prophetic nature of Jesus and the prophetic language that he spoke, and I'm seeing it in the red in the Bible, and I'm reading it in the black in the Quran, but to a greater degree than it is written in the Bible. This is what I was experiencing, and I saw a throng of people, and I was before them saying to them, you have allowed yourself to be led into idolatry. You have been walking by sight and not with your eye having been opened, because your leadership are idolaters. And they have taught you to love your church, to protect the communion table, to be in love with the pastor who's supposed to be your servant. They have taught you to fear death but desire heaven. I could see these things and hear those words and feel the wrath of not the pastoral leadership that was being exposed, but I felt the wrath of Paul. I experienced the wrath of Catholicism, and in doing so, I experienced a sense of purity and oneness that I had never, ever experienced before. That's where all of this is coming from. This has been poured into my soul. It's like my soul that I was born with had absorbed all that it could carry and had experienced all the pain that it could possibly experience. And it died and was removed and replaced with a new soul, with a soul that has written upon it the prophetic words that must be spoken to humanity. A soul that experiences pain, but a soul that can't die. A soul that can experience pain without being hurt. A soul that can see beyond the seen and not be blinded by what it sees. That's the experience that I not only had but am having. And I began to see that the soul, the weapon of my previous soul, was the nature and depth of forgiveness. But this soul is forgiveness itself. It's not in my soul, it is my soul. And though there are those who will never forgive me, it's okay, because they have been forgiven by me for all that they could possibly do to not James, but the damage that they are doing to humanity. That's what this is coming from. I don't process with my mind anymore. everything that I'm speaking to you has already been processed through my soul, through my heart. I cannot explain to you where I am and the book that's sitting in front of you. However, I do know that what I am saying to you resonates with you. You might not be able to intellectually understand it, but you can spiritually embrace
It just tells me the reason why you had the flu and then you had the subsequent illness. It was like a manifestation of all of this stuff that had to be dealt with and had to come out in order to create that space for receiving other a more in-depth understanding and a more universal understanding of spiritual truth across cultures and nations and people.
It seemed to me while you were talking that the previous soul became like a cramped space, and who you are couldn't fit there anymore. It's almost like it's difficult to find the words, but you've moved into a larger part of yourself that's more connected with everyone else, hence your ability to see pain and not be hurt by it in the same way. You are bigger than you were. You're not just, it's less James and more us.
I can see that.
What I see, and I felt it right here, is that you've left your mother and father and you're moving into the new country.
I asked myself, or I was asked, why is it so difficult for you to embrace the thought of another prophet coming after Jesus? Why is it so difficult to embrace that?
Because what we've been taught, Jesus is the only way.
And the answer was resounding. Suppose that when Jesus said, I will not leave you as orphans, remember that? If I go, I will send another to comfort you, even the Holy Spirit, which from the Greek is translated Parakletos. Suppose Jesus was saying, there will come another after me. And I will not leave you as orphans. But when I go, there is one who will come to comfort you. And it is what would change? Because the principles are the same. Why do I say that?
In relationship to
Suppose that spirit was put there and was not supposed to be. How much other stuff has been added that's been taken away? Suppose that's the truth. If that supposition has merit, then there has to be a continuation of the teachings of Jesus, as opposed to quote unquote new teachings. If we look at how Jesus taught how our relationship, male relationship with female should be by virtue of the woman at the well, the woman who touched him with issue of blood, etc. The women that he came in contact with, right? We saw him break all the Pharisaic laws as it pertains to men and women relationship. Did we not? Well, I was reading on my phone, going to highlight some stuff. If my supposition has merit, then I beg you to read what Muhammad had to say about females. If you think my supposition is wrong or demonic, prove it by reading what he says about the female. Because when you look at it, he amplifies what Jesus did. Example, Jesus talked to the woman at the well. Jesus was touched by a woman whose cycle was on and did not consider himself unclean. But Jesus did not openly or did not specifically teach about the right of females to inherit property. And they couldn't during that period. Muhammad taught that females, not only could they inherit property, but they could initiate a divorce from the husband for mistreatment. And he had no right to the property that was acquired during the relationship. He taught that if a man married, if he took more than one wife, and don't come to me with the stuff that Judaism is still doing it, Yemen and in this country too. He taught that if he took more than one wife, it had to be with the agreement of the first wife. He taught that if you marry Audrey, you can't marry Barbara because they're sisters. Is this not the amplification? The property issues? The whole concept of what you have rights to. And I am very much aware that because of what I have been shown and because of my expressing it, there are those who are going to be turned off by it. I am willing for that to happen. It doesn't matter. This journey cannot be continued without the truth of everything that I have been shown. It cannot possibly be enlightening in any way if I don't speak what I see. If I don't speak what I see, I am not worthy to see it. It is blasphemy to believe that there is only one prophet that can lead you to your Creator. That's blasphemy. It's idolatry to believe in human sacrifice. The scripture speaks against that. Why would the Creator need to be appeased while you killing a sheep and bringing it to it? Why? These are Levitical principles. Why is it that Abraham never offered a sacrifice? Oh, you say he offered Isaac. That was a vision that Abraham had in relationship to where Abraham came from. Because sacrifices were made to Baal in the land that Abraham left. So he was being spoken to at that moment in terms that he understood. When you have a vision, you may see people in your vision who you are familiar with, but that helps you to remember what you saw. But it has nothing to do with the person you saw, that you know. It has everything to do with the principle that it represents.
And you can tell, because you'll share the dream with someone and you're like, well, so-and-so was there, but it wasn't so-and-so.
Yes.
It wasn't there. It looked like them, but that wasn't them.
Right. That's what I'm talking about.
While you were there in that space, did you have a visitation from Muhammad?
I felt the presence, if that's what you're asking.
Well, yeah.
See, somebody has to be willing to be the embodiment of the principle. Which means that someone has to be willing to follow the principle wherever it carries. And to be conscientious, courageous enough to voice it.
What?
To voice it. Without voicing it in the earth, it does not manifest in the earth. So anyway, those are the things that I've seen, and there are so many more that's interwoven in my soul that I see, but yet I don't understand.
I see so much power in you. I can't tell you what I'm seeing, but there's so much. I can't even tell you what I'm seeing.
When I saw my body
Oh my
separate
God.
from me, that's what was happening to me. The Creator was disconnecting the soul that had taken all of that punishment and replaced it.
It just gives a different, a more in-depth meaning to the greater things that Jesus talked about. That I've done what I've done what I'm here to do. Greater things shall you do. And you talked about Jesus and Muhammad, but how many other prophets were there that taught basic spiritual principles that are not as well known, but they
Absolutely.
followed in the truth of the. So this is beyond even that. It's at the point of connecting it all, which is that then bringing everything back into the oneness based on that foundational spiritual truth.
And a manifestation of that has been revealed in what they call the Chatterman, the oneness of everything. Europeans came from a black man. And this is the thing that I think most people are missing. When they wrote it, what did they say? That it is from this came European, right? Britons. right? 10,000 years ago. So they're younger children than we thought. We were thinking like 30,000, but 10,000 years ago. So our expectation cannot be that the children will act in mature ways. Maturity is something that's learned.
I'll tell you, the one thing that always kind of, it just didn't sit well with me, because the scriptures teach that every tribe and every nation, would be, for lack of a better word, saved. And I'm saying, well, wait a minute. Some of those tribes and nations have never heard of Jesus. So how is it? How it doesn't? Something doesn't.
And see,
something doesn't match up there.
the reason it stopped with Jesus is because it's easy for Jesus to be a European. It's easy to make Jesus a European, but it's very difficult to make Muhammad a European. That's why it stops with Jesus.
Yeah.
The reason you throw Buddha out the window is because Buddha's a man of color.
Yeah.
So everything of color.
And he really was a man of color because he actually was Indian, not Chinese.
It had to be, yes, dispensed.
Jeez, so much mess.
So
Yeah.
Wow.
I was looking at the website about the Baha'i faith. Yeah, and I often think about that when we talk, because that faith embraces all of the prophets. And from what I just read on their website, they're searching for a unified vision of, they say, religion and humanity. And I feel like in some ways, we're on the same page. I don't know. I have not read any of the writings from, is it Baha'u'llah? Baha'u'llah? That's new to me. But I'm curious now. And I'm also curious about female prophets. Like, are there some buried? Were they men for a reason?
One of the principles of Baha'ism is bringing the races together. That's why in that religion you'll find lots of mixed couples, because that's one of to create peace in the world, bring everybody together.
Interesting. I feel like a lot of principles are there, but they may have been, like, some of them may be stuck in the physical in a way. I don't know. In the same way, like, any religion can get kind of rooted too much in the material, but I don't know. I couldn't help but think about them while we were talking.
see, the concept of religion. The concept of religion is far more than what we have been talking about in terms of the Latin origin of the words, like reconnect. Religion in the Eastern sense is an all-encompassing thing. It encompasses everything that's in search of its spiritual origin. So it does not matter what you call it. What matters is a sincere search for the spiritual origin. Which means that the major error that has been made on this journey was accepting labels.
Accepting.
Labels. Labels were instituted by Pauline Christians. Think about it. There were no Baptists, there were no Methodists, there were no Presbyterians, there were no Protestants, period, until Catholicism created it. That's where it came from, didn't it? Who labeled them? The Creator didn't. There were no Shiites, there were no Shias, until Muhammad's sons labeled them. There was no religion called Islam. There was a belief called Islam. And that belief was about submission to the Creator. If you did not submit to a God, if you did not believe in God, then you were not a Muslim, which means that you were not one who submitted to God. That's the only difference. It's a linguistic thing. It's not about labels. That's not what he was saying. It's linguistic. The ignorance of it all, the joyful ignorance of it all, is to call Allah a demon and not understanding that you're calling God a demon. The painfulness of it is to see people arguing about how demonic and dark and ignorant and hell-bound that you are for saying Allah, when all you are saying is God. It's okay to say Elohim, but you can't say Allah. Why? Why is that so? You can say Elohim because of European Judaism, but you can't say Allah, even though it's the same thing, because it comes from a people of color. That is the reason that people are taught that the New Testament was written in Greek first and then translated into the Aramaic. That's taught in seminaries. How dumb is that? That's willful ignorance. That's self-debasement. That is unintelligent intellect. When you say that someone spoke Aramaic, but they wrote in Greek. That's crazy to me. But guess what? That's what we have been embracing, the craziness of it all. And that's why we're crazy. We are insane. We are spiritually insane. We have been manning in asylum for all of these years, and now it's time to walk out of the asylum and create a pathway, create an opening, create a gateway for those who desire to leave this asylum. When they pass through the gateway, their eye will be open, as was the eye of the Adam in the garden. When it said that, and his eye was open, not eyes. The eye was not open until there was submissive obedience to the feminine, to Isha. When it says that Isha gave unto Ish, who was there with it or with her, and he did eat, and their eye was open. It was the feminine that opened the eye. The serpent is both feminine and masculine, depending on how it is used, which is indicative of a masculine ego and a feminine ego. All the same. Any questions?
Just a comment. When you talked about calling someone a demon, I mean, I just went to that 30,000 or beyond views. when we call each other that, knowing that we are created in the image of the Creator, that's wrong as well. When we put the label on, I see it puts the label on a nation such as Korea, North
Yes.
Korea, that they're just demons. All of everybody comes from the same Creator, and so the more we put the labels on, the more it keeps us separate. And when we talk about individuals have the deity of the Creator in them, you know, it may be hidden, it may be covered, but it's covered in us too. It doesn't allow us to allow for growth and awareness in another when we keep them in that box of the label. I don't know if that. if you
But that's
understand
all
what I'm saying.
that's all we have been taught. I mean, listen at the rhetoric.
So is it blasphemy for us to call, and I say us, the Koreans demonic,
Absolutely.
axis of evil? You know what I'm saying? This country is part of the axis of evil. And that country is made of people who have the deity of the nameless one in them as well.
Not only the North Koreans, the Africans, the Haitians,
Whoever.
Anything that we do or say that is dismissive of the one who created us all is blasphemous. And to call someone that based upon anything is blasphemous. It is disassociating ourselves with the principle of our Creator. I mean, even when you think about the guy in North Korea, how they call him dumb. He's not this, he's not that. He attended the best schools in Sweden. That's why he got his education. This man is extremely smart. The thing that I see is that they're working out their own differences. They're going to meet. That speaks volumes. We're missing that.
Oh, I see it, but
Yeah.
but watch what we do
Oh yes.
to try to drive a wedge through that.
And that is the reason I had to send you the book so you can have in your soul. You know what they do. You know how it works. Now we can deal with it. We can stop it in its tracks because you know how it works. And in every single instance, the same thing has been done over and over.
It unfortunately or fortunately, it makes me understand why the North Korean leader is doing what he's doing.
Yes.
Because he's seen it heretofore that that's the only thing that will garner some modicum of respect in this materialistic world.
See, and that's what I'm talking about when I talk about believing in Christianity. Those who believe in Roman Christianity believe that the North Korean leadership should be killed because it has a nuclear weapon. How can you justify that scripture? That's what I was talking about, Barbara, when I said that there are times when Christianity is the puppet of the government, and there are times when the government is the puppet of Christianity. That's a clear instance of it. There are pieces on Rangers' chessboard that are moving and we don't even see them. And there are pieces that did not fall off. And there are pieces that did fall off, but they'll be back because they were purified and not destroyed. Wait and see what the coming days will bring. Wait and see. The hand of our Creator moving in a visible, yet invisible way. Wait and see how rapidly the order of things began to change. This is not a ship being turned at sea. This is a concept being turned upside down. It doesn't take forever for the concept to be turned upside down. It simply takes a desire to see the truth, to speak the truth, to be the truth without any regard of what comes next. Truth cannot and will not ever submit to any lie whatsoever. Christianity, as it comes out of Rome, Judaism, as it comes out of Europe, Islam, as it comes from the offsprings of Muhammad, all of these are trees with rotten roots, and its followers are seeking and waiting for the fruit to be born on the tree without understanding that the roots are rotten and there's nothing to nourish the tree. There will never be any fruit. But the day will come when the rotten roots will not be able to hold the tree up, and it too shall fall. This is what I see in the very near future. Are there any questions or comments? If not, I'm done. If any questions or comments rise in you after we're gone from the phones, from each other, call me and let's talk about it. If I've said anything that you don't understand, call me. Let's talk about it. If I said anything that you disagree with, call me. Let's talk about it.
When you were talking about the chessboard pieces and some moving and some falling off, elaborate a little bit?
Rainey had a vision.
Yeah, I remember.
And the vision that she had with some of the pieces fell off.
Mm-hmm.
Every
Which
one
ones fell off?
pawns. Some of the pawns fell off. Knight fell off. Everything that falls into the fire is not destroyed. Some of it is purified.
Mm-hmm.
And there are those who have fallen into the clutches of Paulinian Christianity. And they will fight to stay in the clutches of Paulinian Christianity. But at some point, their eye will be open. And they will experience that purification. That's what I'm talking about. See, the rank and file trusted Jesus. The rank and file were afraid to associate with him, but they trusted him. When they needed something, they went to him. The rank and file are in search of something that's real. But because men have been taught to hold on to a lie, even though you know it's a lie, so you can be accepted into a group, or so you can have false respect for each other. We've been taught that, and that is one of the main reasons men can hear the truth and still walk in darkness. It's a chosen thing. No one has to do it, but there are so many who are doing it and they don't know it. is no different than the battered woman who convinces herself that all of the things that's happened to her, the abuse, is her fault. This is what's happening in the churches. The abuse is there. But there's no effort to sever the relationship. Because we've been convinced that this is right and what is going on is our fault. That is why someone can stand in a pulpit and the people have no faith at all in what they were saying, but yet they won't leave.
They're leaving.
It's crazy. This lady called me. She sent me a audio email about her vision. And it's quite a bit. I'm not going into all of it, just a portion of it. This lady grew up at Mount Calvary while I was there. And she has not been to Greater Faith in over a year. And during my period of whatever was going on with me, the things that I saw expressed to you, the things that changed in me, I saw two things. I saw loving kindness, and I saw the protective arm of the Creator. And I expressed that when I did a funeral last Friday. But anyway, when she called me, one of the things she said to me was, I saw you at Mount Calvary, and it was dark. It was not the light. It was not light like it was when we were there. It was dark. And you were preaching love, the love and protection of God, and they got angry with you. And she said, I left not understanding why we were angry with you, but I left knowing that what you were teaching was the truth. And then I was in my mama's house as a little girl again, and I was pondering what you taught. And I said to her, your confirmation, because what you just told me is what I've been dealing with. And the reason you are a little girl again is because of the innocence of your trust. This is the key. She saw no one in Mount Calvary. The building was empty, so to whom will I speak? There are average of 20, 25 people there. Youngest one, 55 years old. Emptiness. You came to Mount Calvary. You saw how many people were there. It's 20, 25 people. So what is all this about? The Creator, when I opened my mouth at Mount Calvary to teach what I started teaching, what I've seen, that's when rebellion took place. When I said, don't treat me like I'm your God, don't give me any more anniversaries, it got really intense. I didn't understand at the time that I was teaching against idolatry. I didn't understand that. When I went to Greater Faith, they embraced it. When I came here, it was embraced. And I wrote in a book the things that was going to happen, and I saw the different people who were involved in this whole thing. And this happened to each one of them as it was written. And there are people who read it from the Mount Calvary, and they've seen how it's worked out. And the last entry dealt with the emptiness of that building. So when you said that about they are leaving, it triggered that. The physical leaving is not necessarily a joyful thing, but it is filled with joy. It is not joyful because they are leaving in pain, but it's filled with joy because they were in search of something better. Not different. They tried different. They've left the Baptist and gone to the charismatic. They tried different, you know. They different is not what they're in search of. They're not looking for a place to speak in tongues and be accepted. They're not looking for a place to sing songs that mean nothing and to hear messages that mean even less. They're looking for a place where their souls can be fed and their spirit can be nourished. They're looking for a place that will pull back the drapes and let them look in a mirror and see God. They are looking for a place where truth is written in stone and lies do not exist. That's what they're looking for, a place where there is no darkness, there are no shadows, there's only enlightenment. That's what they're looking for. They're not looking for a mountaintop experience. They are looking for a life in the valley, regardless of what kind of life it is, as long as that life is coming from the giver of all life. That's what they're looking for, because they have experienced the death of 1,000 lives while sitting in those pews. They have died continuously. They know what it means to die, but they don't know what it means to live. And that's what they're looking for. Amen. I'm done. Any questions or comments? Thank you. Telephone people, we are going to leave you now or disconnect.
Bye-bye.
Love you much.
Y'all been warring against the kids.